Well, hey, less than 24 hours ago, we thought the offseason was over for the Guardians. Turns out
it's never over.
It's never over. They had a little bit of cash. They were just looking for someone to take their money. Hey, finally, who knew? The Guardians got someone to take some money.
Tanner Bobby, the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to an extra edition of Locked On Guardians this week. We did say that even though we're 3 days a week in the month of January, we'd be here if any news breaks, and lo and behold, news broke, and the Guardians spent some money, so we're here to talk about it. Paul Sewald is a Guardian. We'll talk about why the Guardians are adding to their bullpen. We'll discuss whether or not this was the best use of funds, what role Sewald will fill, talk about his 2024 season a little bit, and we'll talk about if there's any other moves that this could lead to coming before the end of the offseason.
It does indeed. It's an interesting day here. Hey, everyone's saying they're never active in free agency. That's what, three free agent contracts, right? But first,
to count Austin Hedges.
Do we count Austin Hedges? I'm kidding. He counts in our hearts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Before we go any farther, I am Jeff Ellis, one of your co-hosts here. Before this, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout in 24/7, where, if we have time, I wrote quite a bit about a minor league edition they made today. But we got a much bigger story to talk about first.
Yeah, we'll talk about Riley Pint maybe at the end a little bit. We might save some of that for the insiders, which we'll talk about later in this episode as well. I'm Justin Ladd. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. I do, too, remember the Riley Pint draft. I remember who they got in the year that the 2016 draft, who they did take. And it was not a great draft. But I saw lots of prospects from there in my time covering it.
It was for them. It was a good draft for them. But those early picks didn't work out. But it was a good draft. That's true.
It didn't. The early picks didn't work out for anybody. Let's be honest. But I was previously editor-in-chief of Indians/Guardians Baseball Insider. I've been at News Herald and Morning Journal for a couple of years now as a freelancer, as well as Prospects Live. And here with you, Jeff, and the Guardians. They are investing in Paul Sewald. And why is it Paul Sewald? I think on the surface, to a lot of people, this feels like a very weird move because
it's not. Hey, I swear.
This was the best bullpen in baseball last year. Probably, arguably, inarguably, it was, top 2, top 3 at the very least. I know there were some issues in the postseason, and which is part of this discussion. I think it's the reality of the free agent market and how Cleveland wanted to find a way to upgrade this team. I do think on the surface, like, you're looking at the roster, right, and you're like, all right, where do they need to add to get better? And I don't think bullpen's the first place. You're like, all right, this is an area of need the team needs to address. It's more like putting I don't know, like what's the right word? A pocket square on a nice suit. Like, you already got the piece of the suit. The pocket square maybe just brings it together. Like, this is like a cherry on top. And I know a lot of people are also saying, like, wow, Paul Sewald not great a year ago, so he's getting $7 million, and you're also saying he's a good addition to the bullpen. I think there are definitely reasons why I'll let you go into a little more why Sewald struggled last year. Are you fanning the flames? What are you doing? Are you setting? This is a hot take.
This is what bullpens are. They're flammable. They turn into dumpster fires like nothing. I mean, we talk about there is no more volatility in baseball than the bullpen, and Cleveland had a bunch of players overperform. No matter what way you want to look at it, you can't count on having historically great bullpens back to back. There's a lot of data that kind of points to Hunter Gaddis regression. A lot of data does still believe in Herron and Sabrowski, Class A, but you're going to count on Trevor Stephan coming back from injury. And we talk about, like, command is the last thing to come back. They move some of their other depth pieces. People want to get excited about Franco Alamand. Like, listen, he's a fun prospect, but if you're counting on him in your pen, you're kind of in trouble because he really hasn't shown that he can do it consistently. I really like Walters, but let's be honest, this team was carried by that bullpen. And you need horses, and you need more horses. And if Paul Sewald, he had an oblique injury to start the year, which are notoriously for, like, sticking with guys the whole year. So he had an oblique and then a neck injury. 3 years before that, he was awesome. Like if he had pitched last year and had been healthy, like he had been in years past, he would have been the number 2 reliever in this free agent market behind Tanner Scott. Full stop. So this is Cleveland betting on a guy. What do they love to do? Buy low. You know, they scout a guy, they see a guy, they're buying low. For people who bring up the option, if he pitches well enough for Cleveland to pick up a $10 million option, then he's not picking it up. If he pitches poorly enough to pick it up, then Cleveland's not picking it up. So that you don't even have to worry about that option here. Just
he
throw
won't
it
be
out.
Here.
He
will not be here in 2026.
0% chance of that getting picked up. There's just no way. It doesn't make any sense for either side. So instead, what this sets up is a situation where they get a right-handed guy. I don't think it means there's another trade. He's supposed to step into the role that Barlow had a year ago, like that kind of veteran role. But he is better than the last 3 years is better than anything Barlow's ever done. He's a better pitcher. He was the closer when the Arizona Diamondbacks made it to the World Series. Like he's got that postseason experience. And I think, the bigger point, and it's one I'm going to steal from Justin here, is this. Listen, I love Pedro Avila. I thought he did a yeoman's job for this team, really stepped in, but he was going to be your long man, the last guy in your pen. And the reason, listen, I would have rather cut Schneemann or Freeman or someone from that group. But I think for them, they're like, well, maybe we can sneak him through now when teams cannot. Like, because the problem is if you cut Avila in a few weeks, teams can then take all of those guys who are hurt. Like the Dodgers are going to take 5 guys and put them on the 60-day disabled list and open up a ton of roster spots. So right now is when you want to try to pass a guy through waivers before a team can do that. As much as like Avila, this is the only way, to steal Justin's point, to get back to it here, that you're going to spend $7 million and improve the team. Starting pitching market, you're not going to get a starting pitcher for $7 million. The hitting market, the hitters out there, I go and I look at Spotrac every day. It's terrible. Jackson Profar is a huge risk. Basically, why he got good last year is he hit the ball hard in his 30s. None of the other data really gives you a whole lot. So it's like you're taking a huge gamble on Profar, who's been an every other year guy, and next year is the off year, or Ha-Seong Kim, who's going to miss half the season. Yeah, yes, there's the Pete Alonsos of the world who's in clear decline and wants a massive amount of money. Let's also be realistic. But there are no hitters. It's a really bad market. Randall Gierchuk is just a poor man's Lane Thomas. Like there is not ways to improve this team in free agency with the starter for 7, with a batter for 7. Your ways to do it, plain and simply, were to go out and get arguably the best reliever on the market.
Yeah, to your point, too, about the bullpen and regression, how fickle they are. A lot of projections have Cade Smith next year with an ERA in the low 3s, high 2s. And that's still a good season. That's a far cry from what he did in 2024 when he came in he was the best reliever in baseball besides Class A or above Class A.
Plus all the extra innings. They kind of need insurance because of all those extra postseason innings, too.
Yeah, there is that as well. I think that's the other side of this, too, is you're bringing in a reliever. And I think Scott Barlow played into this last year a little bit too. I know he didn't have a good end of the season. That's why he was cut. But if you look at his contributions early in the year, he was a good reliever early in the season. And you wanted to take some of the workload off Class A. You wanted to take some of the workload off. Cade Smith wasn't in their plans early because clearly they didn't know he was going to make the open day roster at first because they thought they were going to get somebody better than him off waivers, which is still hilarious. Those guys, he might have tried to, keep the load a little bit lighter for those guys early in the year so they could get their footing, Hunter Gaddis's, things like that. And later in the year, those guys had a little more freshness to them because Scott Barlow was there early in the year to contribute. And I know, again, things didn't go well from late in the year, but like you said, from 2021 to 2023, Paul Sewald was one of the best relievers in baseball. He was the Diamondbacks' best reliever in their 2023 World Series run. Didn't give up a run in the postseason, by the way, until the World Series. He had a tough World Series in 2023, but in the wild card round, and then also the DS versus the Dodgers when they knocked the Dodgers out, did not allow a run to them, didn't allow a run to the Phillies in the NLCS. Like, he was fantastic. He was nails. So I think this is a clear upgrade. I know people are going to say, well, you could have Pedro Avila for like the league minimum and save that money for something else. I'm with you. I don't see where the money goes. Like for $7 million, if I don't know what their hard limit was. Like, they were in on Gleyber Torres and Torres got 10 million. I think he was
15
more
for Torres.
about for 15. Yeah. So Cleveland clearly wasn't willing to go that high. And if their cap was like 7 or 8 million, like you're getting Justin Turner out of that. You are getting Randall Grichuk or
I don't think you're getting Justin Turner for that.
Maybe not. And so maybe it is Austin Hayes or Randall Grichuk. And honestly, Grichuk and Hayes don't really represent much of an upgrade over like a John Kensley Noel or whoever else plays the outfield for you. They don't represent the upgrade that you think they do. They're a little more certain, but in terms of their floor, but for the money spent, you're not really getting your return. And is $7 million really financially responsible for this team to spend on a middle reliever? Probably not in the grand scheme of things, because when you add up the totals here, like, $4 million to Austin Hedges and $7 million to Paul Sewald. But look, they were going to pay Hedges no matter what. They feel like he's got so much value off the field that they have to have him as part of the clubhouse, and you have to have a backup catcher because David Fry can't catch this year. This is a clear upgrade over Pedro Avila. Like you said, Pedro Avila was the last guy in your bullpen. Paul Sewald is not that guy. Now, is there a chance that he struggles this year because he's 35 and his velocity is not great? No, it's not. But if you go back and look at the numbers on Paul Sewald, he has never been a guy who's needed velocity to succeed. He's only been a 93 mile an hour fastball kind of guy. Last year, he was down to a tick under 92, which is a concern because even for guys who succeed with lower velocities, there is a law of diminishing returns, and you need to...
Oblique, though.
Yes, the oblique issue in spring training, those are the worst injury, I think, especially for a pitcher. Like, when you get those injuries in spring training, you really, really struggle to make up the rest of the year. You're trying to constantly play catch up from not getting ramped up in spring training. But yeah, he doesn't really need the velocity to succeed. His velocity has never been that great. He's been a high spin, unique release fastball guy. He's got a great sweeper. Like you said, he's been experienced in the postseason. He's been one of the better relievers in baseball over the last couple of years. If he's healthy going into the year, I absolutely believe he's going to be good. And now you have a Sewald to go with your Cade Smith and your Andrew Walters and Hunter Gaddis and Emmanuel Clase. Without him, like if you look at the bullpen without him, yeah, it's Pedro Avila, it's Zabrowski, it's all those guys, right? And then you're talking about Nick Enright and Frank Weileman as your depth options. Well, now you've got a guy in your bullpen you feel pretty comfortable with or start the year, and you're not rushing Trevor Stephan back. And even though he might be good, like you said, the control's the last thing to come back from Tommy John, guys. There's no guarantee he'll be ready in March to start pitching. It's a little bit of depth, and bullpens regress, and there's going to be hangover. I mean, Paul Sewald might be a guy who suffered from postseason hangover going to spring training and throughout the season, even with the injury. So maybe he's a year removed from that. I think this makes a ton of sense. You're not gonna spend $7 million and get an upgrade offensively. You're not gonna spend $7 million get an upgrade on a starting pitcher or an outfielder. But this is a clear upgrade, and I realize a lot of people too are also saying like, well, they need to upgrade the offense. This is, bullpen wasn't the area of need. I get that too. I get that. But if you aren't able to make meaningful upgrades offensively, what's the next best thing? Run prevention. I got another thing about Riley Pint too, or not Riley Pint. I just looked at him, but I got another thing on Paul Sewald, why I think he's an upgrade and why I think they targeted him over keeping Pedro Avila. And we're also going to have to pay some homage to Pedro Avila because he was important last year. So more from the Paul Sewald signing and fallout next. Well, maybe you want to go see Paul Sewald pitch this year. Before we get to there, though, we've got lots of events in Cleveland. I always talk about how great events are in Cleveland. We get great theater. We get great comedians coming to Cleveland all the time. Concerts are kind of hit or miss, but again, the Cavs, always a hot ticket. The Monsters are actually a ton of fun to go to. I told you the other day I went to a Cleveland Charge game. Any kind of live event you want to go to, Game Time has you covered, and they have you covered with their featured Game Time picks. Really easy to use to swipe through, and it tells you exactly what kind of deal you're getting on these tickets, right? You're getting an idea of the market, and it's telling you what the best picks are for each seat in the arena. And it's also going to tell you what you're going to pay to get into your event with the all-in pricing app. You turn that on, there is no surprise fees at checkout. It tells you exactly how much you're going to pay to go to the event you're looking for, and it's going to show you the best deals out there for that. So it's going to compare it to the market, and it's going to tell you if you're getting a great deal relative to the market and relative to where you're sitting and other deals at the event you want to go to. So if you are looking to go to some events before spring training gets here, there's a lot of them going on. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and you're going to use our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off that first purchase with Game Time. Terms apply, but again, create the account. That is code LOCKEDONMLB. to get $20 off your first purchase. If you haven't done Game Time yet, use it. Get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? We know it is game time. Very quickly, Jeff, before we get into our last points, at least on why Paul Sewald's an upgrade, we haven't mentioned it yet because I want to push it back further into the show so people can come and get the Paul Sewald news. But we are doing Locked On Guardians live stream fest on February 1st. We were just talking about it before the show. So I think the official planning time is we record this podcast at 9:30 Eastern on a weeknight. Let us know how ideal that is for you on a Saturday, but that seems to be the best time we can do this. It seems to be a more ideal time for some guests as well. We were planning it earlier in the day, but some guests said they couldn't make it. So 9:30 Eastern, I believe, is our official time for live stream fest on Saturday, February 1st. If you want to join us, it'll be a Google Meet. So instead of just a chat on YouTube with us on a live stream, it'll actually be you on a call with us. We'll be chatting about the Guardians and all their stuff, baseball. Me, Jeff, you, some guests, all that kind of stuff. But you got to sign up to be an insider to join us to get the link. So join the Locked On Guardians Insider Program. A lot of the insiders, we're already having a lot of conversations about Paul Sewald and Riley Pint. Like, we already had these talks. They kind of know what they're looking forward to in the episode here about what we're going to say and why we like this signing and why it makes sense. So they got that news first, that take first. If you want to be part of that conversation with us, we'd love having the conversation with our insiders. They've been really supportive. You guys have been really awesome so far. So sign up to be an insider and join us on February 1st for Locked On Guardians live stream fest. All right, Jeff, the last thing I want to say about Paul Sewald, too, at least from an upgrade standpoint, there's other things we can talk about, but I looked at some of the numbers, too, and I kind of wonder if it's a batted ball profile thing, because I'm pretty sure, like, at this point, the Guardians defensively are going to be a worse team this year, right?
Yes.
Yes. You know, whoever plays second base will not be as good as Andres Gimenez.
No one is.
No one living
is.
No one living. Well, no one currently active in the sport anyway. Lane Thomas is kind of an iffy outfielder. Like, defense isn't going to be a great thing from them this year. It might not be terrible, but Pedro Avila last year was a heavy ground ball pitcher. 45% ground ball rate. Paul Sewald, heavy fly ball guy. And Jeff, we know
they love
the Guardians. They love fly ball guys. And a lot of it is because they figure fly ball outs are going to be more likely than, or less likely unlucky than a ground ball that might get some BABIP luck. I know ground balls can't go over the fence, but they figure a fly ball most oftentimes is going to be a can of corn. And Lane Thomas isn't horrible defensively. Maybe you can replace him in center field late for defense. We'll figure out how that goes later. But I kind of wonder if the fact that their infield defense took a hit coming into the season, and I'm not saying this is the only reason why, but I think it's interesting that Pedro Avila was definitely a ground ball dude last year, and Paul Sewald gets a lot of fly balls, and I wonder if that fits the profile better of where their defense might be this season.
I definitely think you got some points to that, and with the way they're approaching things and that they have preferred fly ball guys in the past. But the thing I'll say is, like, go look at Avila's Savant page. Like, he is, even with like his off-speed pitch and his pitch run value being good and his fastball value, those aren't predictive. That's just how they were a year ago. Guys didn't barrel him, and he had a high ground ball rate. Everything else is pretty bad. Like, everything screams regression. Like, he threw a lot of pitches. They were not grand. Like, I liked Avila. I was on record as saying, like, I liked him and appreciated what he did. Some fans wanted him to be tried as a starter. There was never any sand to that. That was never actually discussed. But, the Padres cut him. Cleveland pounced. He provided a lot of useful innings. I do again think they cut him very intentionally right now, seeing if he can get through waivers. I think there is a real attempt to do that. We'll see if he gets claimed or not. But Paul Sewald is a player who the previous 3 years was an excellent closer, a guy that Cleveland tried to get in the past when he was with the Mets. They love to get their guys.
Jason Kipnis.
Yeah. He is, his whiff and K percentage were amongst the best in baseball. That's the other thing. This team did not have a lot of guys outside of Cade Smith who had super high K rates at the back of the pen. Like, they kind of missed that with 99 when he was at his peak, what he could do. So and he is just a 2-pitch guy. He is your old school 4-seam sweeper. That's it. And even though it's only those two, he has been incredibly effective. So I think when you go back to, I'm looking at 21 or 20, like there's been some decline. 2021, 2022, they were definitely higher value, but he's still been really strong. And you need some depth back there. And I do think you need more of a veteran presence. I think that helps. I think having that guy who's been through the wars, it felt like when we got to the postseason, I mean, I was here like banging not the drum, not the gavel, all year about Hunter Gaddis. Like, because we took, I like to tease every day or Dave Wendell about like how negative he was on Gaddis. And then when Gaddis had that struggle in May or something and everyone wanted to cut him. But I'll be honest, in the postseason, I was nervous every time I saw him. Like, I don't know if it was too many innings. I don't know if teams figured it out a bit. I don't know what it was, but he was not as effective. And I think it helps having, the guy who's been through it multiple times, who's been effective. And I think, having a bit of a veteran presence is important in that pen. Yes, you have Clase, who is that guy, but I think adding more to it. I think that's why when you think back to the great teams under Tito, it's like every single year they added, the Matt Albers, the Jeff Manship, the Brian Shaw. There was always someone that they added as a veteran presence. And instead of going, and remember they paid like Brian Shaw, $3-4 million? It was like mind boggling at the time, but they have always paid for a veteran reliever on this team. Like I said, last year it was Barlow. Before that it was Shaw. They just always believe in adding one veteran reliever every year.
Let's be clear too. Like, and this is not a hit piece on Scott Barlow, but Scott Barlow, his best season was never as good as Paul Sewald. So like people who are saying this is Scott Barlow all over again. I don't think Barlow was ever as good as Paul Sewald. Not only that, but Scott Barlow always had command issues. Paul Sewald's not a guy who walks a lot of people. So that's not a thing you really have to be concerned about either. Even the struggles last year, he wasn't walking a ton of dudes either. Yeah, they've always got a veteran presence. Like Pedro Avila, again, like you said, soaked up a lot of valuable innings when this team had starting pitching issues all season long. And when guys were getting knocked out early, he was the guy who was coming in and mopping it up and taking one for the team. And that's a very valuable role to have. And they're still going to need someone to do that. And just now it might be Eric Dabrowski. And also let's not forget, they also traded Eli Morgan. So like, this is another guy you're taking innings back from too, is Eli Morgan.
Might be Tristan McKenzie too. Like if McKenzie doesn't win that fifth start, like if they think that,
or Slade Ciccone, right? It could be any of those guys. This is a like Pedro Avila wasn't on the postseason roster, right? And he did make it late after they scratched.
I mean, neither was Ben Lively, and he's probably going to be their number 4 starter right now.
Yeah. So Avila played like an important role, and he actually pitched really well against the Yankees in the postseason. Yeah. So like kudos to him. There's nothing wrong with what he did. No. This is an upgrade, and because like if you're pitching Pedro Avila in high leverage innings, no matter what inning it is, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, like you're not really pitching Pedro Avila in the 7th inning unless he's soaking up blowout innings. But Paul Sewald is a guy who's pitching in high leverage in the 7th inning, right? Like that was supposed to be Scott Barlow last year, and he did okay early on, and he kind of had some hiccups later. But again, like I said, Sewald's peak, Barlow's peak has never matched it. So this is a clear upgrade. And I know people are saying, well, you have to be able to give your bullpen leads, and that's true. You do. I'm not saying the offense is fixed because of this, but like we said at the top of the podcast, like for $7 million, you're not, you're getting the Randall Grichuk's, you're getting the Austin Hayeses, and I don't think that's really giving you more than what you already have. So when you have leads to give your bullpen, you better not blow them. And I think not that I'm saying Pedro Avila blew them, because you're putting him into games when the game's already out of hand for the most part. With Paul Sewald, he's pitching with the game on the line at some point during the game, and you've got to be able to hold those leads. And now the bullpen gets even better. You have more options. You're betting against regression. You're trying to fight against regression and burnout from the year before, which is extremely important. And they know that. So I think that's a big piece of this too. Let's see. Let's talk the other half of this too, about the signing. People want to say, does this mean there might be a trade? We'll address that next.
But first, it is time to talk about our good friends over at Select Quote. And As I say, everyone's a good friend who helps support the show. In sports, have a winning strategy. It's everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy as one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers find $70 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to as much as $5 million. No medical exam required. It's more affordable than you think. You can get $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote. They shop, you save.
Appreciate you all tuning in on Locked On Guardians today. Make sure you are downloading on Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Set that auto download so you never miss an episode. Go to YouTube, subscribe so you never miss an episode too. If you got multiple email accounts, I talked about that yesterday. I have like 4 email accounts because I don't like to use my main email to sign up for things. I like to put that stuff into other inboxes. So if you're like me and you have multiple emails, go and like us or go subscribe on YouTube. Then you don't have to worry about anything. You just are using an extra email. We're trying to get to 4K. We're a little under 300. Let's get to 4K before the start of the season on YouTube. And like I said, make sure you're auto downloading as well so you never miss an episode on audio wise. All right. So people are wondering now. Let's do a Trade Talk Thursday, Jeff. People love Trade Talk Thursday. With signing Paul Sewald, does this mean that the Guardians might be entertaining trading a reliever to upgrade another spot in the roster? Is this a path where this could go?
Well, let's very quickly go. 8 relievers, right? So we got Clase, Smith, Gaddis, Sewald, Heron, Walters, Zabrowski, Steffen. So that's 8. So then the question becomes like,
McKenzie, Ciccone.
Cicconi's got options. That's the thing with him. He's still got options.
He's a king of options.
He's like Ben Lively. McKenzie's your only guy without options. And then, Nick Enright is kind of like the next guy up if they have health issues. You got, Cantillo, who's in Logan Allen and Doug. I still think Nick Casey might be best off long-term going back to that pen role that he was in college. But, when you're looking at this team, they go and they add a Sewald to kind of make it, I don't know if I want to say like bulletproof, but to help make it that way. Like you go through and in that situation, Trevor Steffen is probably your weakest pitcher just because he's coming back from injury. That's a darn good pen. And they know they need the horses of the pen. Now, if someone blows them away, they're always going to say, okay. Like, I don't think where I would say, does it mean that, am I saying they won't trade a reliever? No. What I am saying is I don't think this means that another trade is incoming. Because the one thing we have seen with this team is when they line up one move for another move, they happen like right next to each other. Like there isn't a trade coming because they made this move. Now, might a team call them looking for relief help because the relief market, the other thing that is with this is with the Dodgers going out and getting Yates and Scott, and then Cleveland taking Sewald out, Carlos Estevez, Hoffman was out a while. Like you got Estevez. I think Kenley Jansen's probably one of the 5 best relievers left, and he's close to cooked. Like it's not a great market there either. So in a way, they've been kind of, they got the last first baseman left on the market. They jumped in the relief market as it's starting to disappear. We know they're open to trades. I don't think it's basically a fancy way of saying this doesn't guarantee a trade. But they're always listening. They're listening to us right now. It's not even posted yet. Somehow they're listening. They've got, they're always listening. They are the big brother of baseball.
Looking for that planet. Oh, the microphone's right here. They have tinier mics listening to us right now. They're hacked into our systems, of course. I'm just kind of curious to see. I think that all depends on whether or not teams are interested in relievers. Like I saw a rumor that the Reds were resuming talks with Carlos Estevez, so he's still out there. So in theory, the Reds are interested in a reliever, right? We know the Cubs are still interested in a reliever because the Cubs wanted Kirby Yates. They were interested in other guys, and
They're
even though
like
even with
Dave Robertson now, and
like he's still out there. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
the Cubs are still interested in a reliever. You already traded him one, but they really need a higher leverage guy. And obviously the name we keep pointing to is Hunter Gaddis, because I think we know they're not trading Kate Smith. We know they're not trading Clase, at least not yet. And the rest of the guys really don't have.
I mean, they might chop Heron if you need a lefty. Like, I mean, Heron could, if you believe in
Yeah, but they
Zabrowski.
don't really have another lefty though. Like that's it. They're stuck with those guys. I mean, you have Cantillo and DeCasey, but I think Heron's too valuable with Henches out that you're going to stick with him. But I think Gaddis is the guy you point to. But you're going to carry a high value on Gaddis because of the club control, and you want someone to blow you away because you want someone to buy in that what he did in 2024 is just the tip of the iceberg of what he can be. And there could be some regression there. And again, the same thing with Cade Smith. Like, projection systems don't have him being a sub 2 ERA guy in the regular season. He might be because projections just aren't caught up. But Hunter Gaddis, even with some regression, could still be a good reliever next year. It depends. And value is all in the eye of the beholder. So, like you said, it takes one team to believe in a guy and make that trade. So I don't necessarily think a trade's afoot here. I don't think there's any real straight line pointing from signing Paul Sewald to a trade being lined up. I wouldn't bet against it. I would definitely say that other teams will become calling and saying, "Hey, what are you thinking about Hunter Gaddis's value or Eric Sabrowski's value? What are you thinking?" And the Guardians will listen because that's just who they are. Like, I'm not saying teams won't come calling, especially if they're needing the bullpen. Like, I'm looking at the Cubs bullpen right now. The Cubs definitely need a reliever. Like, their best reliever in this year is going to be Porter Hodge. And I was a big Porter Hodge guy in the minors, but like, best reliever on a team that wants to make the playoffs? I don't know about that. Tyson Miller is your setup guy. They traded for Nate Pearson. Like, that's clearly a bullpen. And I don't know that Hunter Gaddis is like a guy you're like, okay, we get him. Our bullpen's solved. I'm not saying that either. But I don't know. Maybe you can find some common ground on
I'm going to point out
for them.
The Rangers again. Like, I will just keep bringing this up.
Bryce was saying that they should re-sign Kirby Yates over on Lockdown Rangers.
Yeah,
and they missed out. They do need a reliever for sure.
And I still
I know who you're going to say.
Josh Smith. It's like Josh Smith makes too much sense. Like, we know they like that flexibility. We know they need another reliever. Josh Smith right now is going to be like a bench bat. He's a lefty, which they need. Like, Hunter Gaddis for Josh Smith just makes too much sense for both sides. Like, that's the one I would like to see. Yeah, teams
do need relievers.
Yeah,
there are teams out there that need that relief help. So while we're not saying a trade's imminent, there are teams out there who are looking to add relievers. And personally, like, the Rangers probably need Josh Smith. Like, I know there's not a lot of at bats there for him, but like, would they rather bring back David Robertson or I'm trying, who else is on the market? Kenley Jansen.
Yeah,
maybe they go that route, but you could also go out and get Hunter Gaddis and get someone cheaper and just trade and upgrade for a guy you're going to have club control over. So I don't know.
I mean, they got Bosque there who could play a similar role for them is all I'm saying.
Sure. I like him too.
And then I mean, you look at that bullpen has Sean Armstrong, former Guardians draft pick, who has spent a career being like cut from rosters. Like, that's someone that is in their bullpen. He's the most borderline of major leaguer. He's played a lot. He's almost 35. And then Hobie Milner, who you might remember for being the guy that Cleveland took in the expansion draft the year they lost Anthony Santander. They had a spot open. They took Milner, who they later
roll 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like Robert Garcia, who they traded for with the Nathaniel Lowe deal. Chris Martin is set to be their closer at all of almost 39 years of age. That's a team that makes sense for both sides, honestly.
Yeah, you never know. We didn't think the Guardians would be signing anybody else. I don't know if they will now, but maybe there's a trade still to happen. I don't know necessarily if it's imminent, but I do think it at least gives them the flexibility to do that kind of thing if they feel like, I mean, adding, let's say Paul Sewald is not replacing Pedro Avila, but he's replacing Hunter Gaddis because you're adding Josh Smith. Like, that's a net upgrade, right? That's a huge net upgrade, I think, for this roster on both things. So I don't know. We'll see. All right, before we get out of here on this episode too, the Guardians did make another move for Riley Pint. If you're not familiar with Riley Pint, he was the 4th overall pick in the 2016 draft by the Colorado Rockies. So before he even got threw a pitch in the major leagues or even in the pro ball, he was already screwed because the Rockies don't develop pitching.
Yeah. Ask him,
this
Mike Nicarac, they took a lot of prep arms that went really poorly.
So bad. So Riley Pint, I'm very fascinated to see what they think about this. They didn't really talk about it in the email. I'd love to hear something from Chris Antonetti on why they're taking a shot here. I understand why they are. I definitely get it, but I want to hear from them what they're saying, at least what they're hoping for, because he's a minor league signing only. He's got to invite to Major League Spring Training. I mean, this was one of the best pitchers in high school in his draft year. Like, I remember him and Jason Groom were
Matt Manning were the two big righties in that class.
Yeah, but him and Groom were like the Gatorade or the Golden Spikes watch list guys. Like, that was the award list for like the top amateur player. That usually goes to college guys, but they were both on that list. Like, him and Groom hasn't worked out either.
Well, Groom, there was a lot of other stuff. Like, he ended up getting suspended that year. Like, everyone who knew baseball knew there was more going on, but Pint was a clean character profile.
Character, yeah. And I think his character has been a big piece here, because like Pint threw 102 as a high schooler, and I know you could speak to this better than I can, but like he was a basketball player, a really good one, good athlete. The guy just had no idea where the strike zone is, and he still doesn't. Like, he made his major league debut last year. I'm still surprised he did, but like he had a 3-something ERA in AAA in like Albuquerque or wherever the AAA team is for Colorado now, which is hard to do in that league. Yes. But he had like a 20% walk rate. So like, he does not command the baseball by any stretch of the imagination, but he still gets whiffs because his stuff is still so good. And it always has been good. He just has never found the strike zone. And then he retired in 2022 because his confidence was lacking and mentally it wasn't going well for him. Comes back last year, makes his major league debut. Great story. Learns a lot from Daniel Bard, who took some years off because he was going also through some mental struggles. And he came back to have a really good end of his career too. So, Pint ends up being a guy who is a nice story in terms of being a high pick who didn't struggle in high school and got to the pros and just could not throw a strike and struggled for the first time in his baseball career, and took him a while to make it to the majors, and is a nice comeback story. So I think there's something that he said too for character of that and what that adds as well.
Yeah, I think so. The big thing here is
great ticket arm wise.
I think there's a few big points. One, he threw hard, but he also had a plus changeup. Like, he was viewed as like a potential 80 grade fastball and a 70 grade change at the time. So 2 plus pitches, like big time pitches. He got hurt very quickly with Colorado. I mentioned Mike Nicarac. He's another guy you can go look at. Colorado, it's still bad at development. Like, it's a wasteland of an organization. For as much as people want to complain, at least we're not Colorado. Yeah, Colorado signed Chris Bryant after he was washed up. Like, they sign guys who are washed. Like, they spend money, but they do it in the wrong way. So Pint went to a bad organization. He got hurt. He didn't get good development. And this is where Cleveland has a net advantage, because everyone knows, like, even that recent survey, like, what is the best place for pitching development? Cleveland. Like, people view it. So for a guy who has had confidence struggles, who has had health struggles, who has had developmental struggles, but has $1 million arm, literally,
multi-million-dollar arm.
Yeah, it's a situation where, hey, you can instantly gain a little bit more confidence, being like, I'm going to that pitching factory. I'm going to go from a place that didn't know their backside from a hole in the ground to the best place to learn how to pitch. And that helps, just being healthy, being around the right people. Like, that's going to give him a huge mental boost for a guy who quit the game because he felt like he was done. And now you just work on the mechanics. And that's one of the big things. Like, this kid needed some mechanical work out of high school. That was a known thing. He didn't get it. I mean, having seen him pitch, it doesn't look like he's changed at all. No, he didn't get it. So, like, there's a lot of ways for this. I mean, more than likely than not, this is going to be a footnote of nothing. But there's also ways where he ends up being
There's a world.
There is a world where this guy ends up being a September call-up and is just a killer reliever. Like, I don't think he's a starter. I don't think the path back is as a starter.
No.
But I think if you can help him get some things in order, we talked about it, the change is agnostic about which way you, if you're a righty or a lefty. It's what did you say? You did a great job calling it platoon agnostic. So when you put that fastball with that change, that gives him a chance to be a very effective reliever. if they can work on everything else. And as you said, this is an all-state basketball player. At LSU, I don't know if he would have been able to play on the basketball team, but if he had gone to another lesser program, he might have. Like, he was big-time athlete, great kid, really good stuff. He's a fun kid to dream on. He's going to be a fun kid to watch in camp. And again, Matt Manning was the guy that Detroit ended up taking that, a lot of people ended up liking more than him as the draft approached. Manning, also son of a basketball player. Fun side note there. We're talking about basketball.
Yeah.
But with that,
famous.
Manning is still yet to establish himself. Like, it takes a while sometimes with arms. So there's some meat on the bone.
Yeah. To your point too, before we get out of here, we need to wrap up today's show. But to your point, Cleveland has never been a team that can turn around control guys. Their bread and butter is taking control guys and adding velocity, not necessarily adding control. So this will be. It is interesting you're saying that, he's maybe more confident going to an organization that knows pitching, but we all know that there's really no test cases for them to look at and say, this
Mike
is the guy we
Clevenger.
improved.
That's the one guy.
Yeah, there is Mike Clevenger, although, so far I'd say Riley Pint better character than Mike Clevenger. But yeah, they did help him. And speaking of character too, I want to bring this up. Two things about Scott Barlow too before we run. You brought up off air the character there. He has been
you mean Sewald, not Barlow.
Scott Barlow, yeah. See, even I'm doing it. People are convincing me this is Scott Barlow. But you brought up off air Paul Sewald, Roberto Clemente Award nominee. So obviously the clubhouse piece of this is really important too, and we know Cleveland values that. And I lost the last thing I was going to say. I'm going to piss people off by saying this, but as far as the payroll goes, so you also mentioned that they are now back to the same payroll they had a year ago to start the
opening day payroll.
Yeah, their opening day payroll right now is pretty much identical to what it was in 2024. So in theory, this should not restrict them from adding later in the season. That was my only point about payroll here is, people got mad at me saying the Miles Straw trade was cheap because they didn't want to pay him. Well, that money has been directly reinvested. So, there you go. I can back off that. And now I could say the Miles Straw trade was good because I'd rather have Paul Sewald than Miles Straw on this roster. Clear upgrade. But it does. I think the important thing too is that it shouldn't restrict them from adding to the payroll at the trading deadline, which it didn't a year ago. Because if they have the identical payroll now as they did last opening day, that didn't restrict them from adding to payroll in July, and it shouldn't now. That's the only thing I want to point out too, because when you're giving the Paul Sewald that kind of money, and Scott Barlow made more money than Paul Sewald, right? I think he was $10 million.
He was, I believe, 8. I thought he was 8.
Okay. Whatever. So Paul Sewald makes a little bit less than Scott Barlow did a year ago. So as long as it doesn't restrict your ability to add at the deadline to payroll, that's fine too. But it shouldn't. And it didn't a year ago. But I also want to make sure we put that up there too. All right. Make sure you're subscribing again. Download automatically on audio. Make sure you never miss an episode. It helps us too. Sign up to be an insider. Join us for Locked On Guardians Live Stream Fest February 1st. We'll be chatting with you over a Google Meet, and we'll have some guests. I know Sully from Locked On MLB will be with us. Got some of their names out there. We'll get you that link closer to the date. You can also email us, too, if you're not a social media or YouTube person. If you're just listening on audio, loguardiansshow@gmail.com is a good place to reach us, too. Appreciate everybody who's taking the listener survey, too. We got a lot of great feedback on the survey. Appreciate that. That is a link you can find on YouTube or in the show description. But we've got a lot of great feedback on the surveys, so this is your show. Like, Jeff and I love doing this. We love talking Guardians and baseball. We would be doing this anyway by ourselves, but it's more fun that we get to talk about it with you and for you because it's your show. Like, we're recording this because we're doing it because we think it's what you want to hear. So when you guys give us the survey, it helps us make sure that it's a show you enjoy. So, all right. That's it for this week. Jeff, are you pushing your solo episode back? You were going to do Friday.
Yeah, we're gonna push it back, which is funny because this is like the third time I've pushed back the Reddit mailbag. There's been some great questions in there. One question in particular, I think we're gonna save for maybe a show with us later. The one about the 10 curated items for the museum. Ooh. I think you like that one quite a bit when I was bringing it up. But first, I want to say thank you. Great response over on Reddit. It's been fantastic. But every time I set up or message about, like, when I first messaged the board, I believe the Jimenez trade happened the next week. When I finally post the question, we get the Sewald signing. So guys, whenever I go there, it's causing things to happen. So that's another reason. Great group over there to check out.
Do it again.
I apologize for some of the clicking. I was trying to find my Riley Pint scouting report. If I do find it, I'll put it up on subtext to share as kind of a bonus. because I mean IBI doesn't exist anymore, so you can't find the articles online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll throw that out there. Thank you all for everyone who's joining us. We will get to that mailbag, I promise you. This
Speaking
has
of
been
the subtext, by the way, I want to point that out. Jeff just talked about it. So the Insider program, if you're still listening, you're a diehard. We love that. We have a Google Drive set up on that only the insiders have access to. And what that's going to include is links to a bonus episode each month, probably one or two, where one of it's a mailbag and one of it is us just kind of riffing on leftover topics. We'll call it Locked On Guardians Leftovers. And it's going to include some written content from time to time, too. We're talking Jeff's scouting report. We might have some other written content, draft stuff, prospect stuff. All that stuff will be over on the Google Drive link you can only get on the Insider program over at Subtext. So definitely those are more benefits you're going to get, additional content, stuff like that.
And you still get great content whether or not you subscribe. So we think to anyone who's watching. So no matter what, you're still getting, we're supposed to end at 28 minutes and we're at 45. So, and it's the off season. We're supposed to give ourselves breaks. Instead, we're jumping in to discuss this. So no matter what, we're giving you tons of content. But if you want even more, now you know where to get it.
We'd love to have you.
Yep. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you understand Paul Sewald a little more now and why it happened. Thank you all, and go Guardians, go.